All right, so we are going to just keep moving through Exodus, second book of the Bible, chapter 10. This is going to be the full chapter, verses 1 through 29. So we are going to jump right in. We left off in Exodus 9 with the first seven plagues. So we have gone through chapter 7, chapter 8, and now chapter 9, then all the first seven plagues. And we are going to wrap up the plagues before we get to the big one that everyone kind of talks about all the time, the one we know about, because that one was the one that devastated the land. That comes in chapter 11. But quick recap of the plagues. First plague in chapter 7 is that all the water turned into blood. Second plague in chapter 8 is frogs covering the land. Third plague is lice covering the air. And then the fourth plague, also in chapter 8, is flies everywhere. All of that. So there's great horrible smells. Fish are dying. Frogs cover the land. Then all the frogs die. Then there's lice everywhere. Then there's flies. And not just your little house fly that come land, but like biting flies. Like this is a pest. And then in chapter 9, we covered the next three plagues, which is the cattle. There was a distinction between the cattle of the Israelites and the Egyptians, and the Egyptians' cattle all died. And it's not just cows, it was everything. So it was their sheep, it was donkeys, camels, all of their cattle, all their animals died. And then there is the boils where, God asked Moses to throw the dust up, and it covers all the people, and it creates this horrible skin disease, these boils all over their body. And then there's the plague of hail, and hail comes down, and it comes with fire. So there is fire on the ground and burning up everything, and then there's hail, these huge balls of ice falling from the sky that are beating down all the green. Everything green, all the crops that are ready to be harvested, all the trees that are there, and it's destroying all of that. So we are going to pick up in chapter 10. And in chapter 10, God tells Moses to go to Pharaoh and say, I've hardened his heart. And we've talked about the hardened heart before. I'm not going to dig deep there today. I've hardened his heart and the heart of his servants. So now it's not just Pharaoh who's like, nah, I'm going to beat him. You getting smacked every which way, but you going to stay in the fight because you feel like if I stay here long enough, then maybe something miraculous is going to happen. And he's saying, I've hardened Pharaoh's heart and the heart of his servants so that I can show these signs, so that there is a record of like the annihilation of this world power, so that I can prove that I am God. For the unbeliever that's going to be born, 100,000 years from now, that needs to know that I'm a God who can do something this great. And so in verse 3, Moses and Aaron go to Pharaoh and say, look, we've been going back and forth with this for a long time. God is getting ready to send another plague. Why don't you just humble yourself? Like, you refuse to humble yourself before God. And so you keep causing these problems for your people. All you had to do was let the people go worship God. All you had to do was let these people go and serve their God. That's it. We didn't have to make it a battle. And so he said, look, since you refuse, tomorrow locusts are going to cover the earth. It's going to be so many locusts. It's going to be more than you've ever seen. Now, locusts, for people who don't have locusts, are like giant crickets. Like the way cicadas hit, like every couple, 17 years or something like that, 15, 17 is an odd number. But they come up out of nowhere and they are like covering everything. And like the side of a building is all black because it's covered with bugs. It was like that, but it was everywhere. Cicadas are a type of locust. Grasshoppers are a type of locust. These are things that we see, modern day, things that we see even in our very city lives. These bugs, these insects, these huge, very huge bugs, will come up and they come up and they mate. And so at this point, God said, look, I'm sending locusts. And he sent locusts so many that it was impossible to do anything. You couldn't go anywhere. They were covering every surface, the entire ground. Like the ground was black for them being there. And they eat while they're here. And so everyone who's had like cicadas, they've come up recently in the last like 2-3 years. We've had cicadas in most of our areas. And they eat the plants. Like they go through and they just destroy trees eating them. Like they come and they eat like they need to eat for the next 20 years. One meal is going to cover them for 20 years. And they eat everything. But it destroys everything that's green. And so it says in between verses 5 and 6, it talks about how thick these locusts are going to be. That they're going to cover everything in the ground. They're going to fill houses and the houses of your servant. Not like you got a big house, all the locusts going to be in your house bothering you, but they're going to cover everything that you've never seen this. The ground itself is going to be black because there's so many of them. And so in verse 7, it says, and Pharaoh's servants said to him, how long shall this man be a snare to us? Let the men go, that they can serve the Lord, and that way we not destroyed. The servants who are in the household with Pharaoh have now decided, look, man, we done been through too much. We done had frogs and lice and bloody water, and not bloody water, but just blood instead of water. Like, it's been flies and frogs, and the cattle have died, and there's boils and there's hail and fire. All these things have happened. Like, they're still attributing this to Moses. They're still saying, Moses and Aaron, why do you keep letting them come in here and start this stuff? Let the people go and get this over with. Like, just let them go worship. Just let them go. It don't even have to be a thing. Just let them go. Now, had Pharaoh let them go originally, they came in and was like, hey, can we take 3 days to go? Can we travel 3 days and go worship and then come back? He was like, go ahead, man. Go and take your little 2-week break. Go worship, travel, worship for a week and travel back and then get back to work. Then it wouldn't have been a thing. They wouldn't have been freed from slavery. God was attempting to free them in a way that showed the power of God and got the people free and put the world on notice. And so this is the way that it was done. Because if they'd have just let them go, they'd have had to come back. Now when they go, they don't have to come back. So he said they went in so in verse 7, Pharaoh's servants said, how long you going to let these men be a snare? How long you going to let them come in here and start trouble? Why you keep letting them walk in here and tell us what's getting ready to happen? Every time he come in here and say it's going to be something happen. Why are you still doing this? Why have you not decided that it's enough? It's enough. Let's cut this off. Let the people go. And so Moses and Aaron were called back. And when they were called back, they were like, look, he was like, okay, well, who do you want to go worship? Who do you want to go? And Moses was like, hey, we're going to take our young, we're going to take our old, we're going to take all our cattle, we're going to take all our stuff. We're leaving no things behind when we go. And he was like, if Pharaoh was like, you think I'm stupid? I'm going to let every slave pack up everything they own and leave? You must be joking. Get out of here, foolishness. Like he said, man, that's evil. When he's calling it evil, he's like, that's foolishness. That's asking for trouble. If I let y'all walk out of here with everything you have, that's asking for trouble. That's me giving you permission to go. Nah, y'all not getting ready to leave. Y'all got to work. I can't let the whole labor force leave. I'm already financially in shambles. I already have all these issues. The crops have been destroyed. The cattle have died off. This water has affected it. We've had so many pests and pestilence that there's disease now in the land from all these animals and all these insects and things like that. I'm going to let the entire workforce just walk out of here? Nah, I don't think I'm going to do that. That's foolishness. And so he was like, look, man, that's crazy. I don't know why you thought that was going to work. So they put him out. Get out of here with that. That's crazy. Get out of here. I'm not letting y'all leave. And so it says in verse 12, and the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand. Let's kick this off. Let's do it. And so Moses does that. And all the locusts come. And it says that they were to come to eat every herb of the land, even all that the hail left. The hail came and destroyed crops, whatever was left. You're not even going to be able to pick up the almost ripe fruit, the almost ripe grain, the almost ripe. You're not going to get none of that. God said, nah, they're going to come and eat everything that was left behind. And so Moses does what God said, and the locusts came, and they were everywhere. Everywhere. It said it in verse 15, for they covered the face of the whole earth so that the land was darkened. And they ate every herb of the land and all the fruit of the trees that the hail had left. There remained not any green thing in the trees or the herb of the field throughout all the land of Egypt. Any food that was not already in your house in storage is gone. Crops gone. Harvest gone. Storage gone. Everything is gone. You are starting from scratch. This was a powerhouse. When we looked at the Israelites going into Egypt, they went into Egypt because there was food in the land and it was plenty. It was so much food in Egypt that they were able to sell food to other nations. It was so much food in Egypt that they were able to salvage and create the Israelites their own city in Egypt. There was so much food in Egypt that Egypt had gotten rich off the people. They had received all the money in the treasuries, and there was no money left among the people to buy food. And they had sold off all their cattle. There was no cattle left to be sold off. They had sold off their own properties. The only thing that the Egyptian people owned, that the Egyptian government had not taken from them for this food, was themselves. So now it's gone. It's destroyed. All of it's gone. The very thing that saved the people of God is now gone. And so in verse 16, Pharaoh called for Moses and said, I sinned again. I sinned against God. I sinned against you. Tell your God to take this away. This is death right here. We're going to die. Ain't no food. There's no commerce. There's no nothing. Like, take it away. Tell your God to take this away. And so he left. And he went and he prayed, and God removed it. He sent a wind and blew all the locusts away. And so they were gone, blew them all into the water. So they died off. So they're not there anymore. And in verse 20, it says he wouldn't let the people of Israel go. All of that, he didn't get it. All of that, and it still wasn't over. And so after that, God told Moses to stretch your hand out so that it can be darkness. Even darkness which may be felt. It was so dark that, and I don't like, if you've ever driven on a country road where there's no street lights and all you got is like the stars, it's a different type of dark. This darkness right here was without the possibility of light. And that darkness is different. And so for 3 days, there was a darkness that fell. And this darkness fell only on Egypt. It did not fall on Israel. Israel had light in their dwellings. Israel had light, but Egypt had a darkness, and it was so dark that they didn't leave their homes or their beds. This was not just a physical darkness. This was almost a depression. If you are trapped in your own house in darkness and can't see in front of you, it says in verse 23 that they saw not one another. Neither rose any from his place for 3 days. That's a different kind of darkness. This is a darkness you feel. This is not, I don't have any light. This is a lack of hope. This is a despair. This is a depression that people are sitting in. When you sit for 3 days and you don't get up, you don't leave your house for 3 days, that's a depression. This is a darkness you feel. And so Pharaoh called to Moses and said, hey, go serve your Lord. Go worship. Just let your flocks and your herds stay here. Take your kids, take your people, but let the animals stay. Because I know you'll come back for these animals because there's wealth in these animals. I know you'll come back for these animals because if you don't, then we own your animals and we needed them anyways. And so Moses was like, nah, we gotta take the animals. How we gonna sacrifice with no animals? We gotta have an animal for a sacrifice. We gotta have something to bring as an offering. And so our cattle got to go with us. It's got to go. The cattle has got to go with us. And we can't leave a hoof behind. I think that's funny. If we can't leave a hoof behind, we got to take every single animal. Like, it's not like I can only take what's needed for the sacrifice. I got to take it all. Everything got to go with me. And so Pharaoh was like, man, you really think I'm a fool? All this fighting, all I've been through, you think I'm going to let you walk now? You think I'm getting ready to give up right now? He was like, look, man, go on out of here. Because next time you look me in my face, you're going to die. Because you keep talking, every time you come in here, you say something crazy and something crazy happens. And I'm sick of holding these conversations with you. Next time you come in here, I'm not even going to let you tell me what's going to happen. I'm not going to let you say it because I'm pretty certain when you say it, it happens. So I'm not going to let you say it. You come in here again and you're going to die. The next time you see my face, you will die. That is what he said. That's a threat if I ever heard one. That's an on-site right there. That's on site. Next time you see me, it's done. That's a wrap. Like, this is capital threat because this right here is a threat from the king. This is from the Pharaoh. This is a world leader. Like, this is a done deal. And so that brings us to the end of chapter 10. Chapter 11 is next, and it brings us the final plague, and it brings us some information on how they were to prepare for that final plague and what happens out of that. So we will pick up with that in the next video, but a quick recap. So at the start of chapter 10, God tells Moses, hey, go warn Pharaoh that there's going to be locusts, that they're going to come and eat up everything that was spared, that survived the hail. And I want you to tell him, look, he gonna harden his heart. He not gonna listen, but I want you to go warn him. And when he hardens his heart, don't get upset. Just know it's coming. I'm telling you ahead of time. This is what's getting ready to happen. We almost to the end. Just stick with me. We almost there. And so he sends the locusts, and these locusts come and they eat up anything, any storage, any food that was ready to be harvested, anything, the plant, little sprig of green that pops back out to kind of give you the hope that something else is going to happen. That's gone. It's all eaten. It's all destroyed. There's nothing left. And then after all of this comes through, and they are sick of it because the ground is black from the amount of bugs on it. Ooh. And so Pharaoh calls Moses and was like, hey, tell your God that's enough, we out. And so he calls it off, and then God says, look, I want you to stretch your hands up, and there's going to be a darkness that can be felt in the land. And it says that the people in Egypt are in darkness that they can feel, but the people of Israel do not have this. They have light in their dwellings. And this darkness is a darkness you can feel. It is a deep, deep darkness. But it also says that the people don't leave their homes for 3 days. It also says that they don't see each other. And it just feels like a depressive kind of moment. This is a lack of hope, darkness, on top of all of that. So this is something that you can feel. This is giving emotional darkness as well as physical darkness. But it does not affect Israel at all, only Egypt. And at the end of 3 days, that lifts. And so Pharaoh calls in Moses and tells him, like, hey, let's go. Who do you want to worship? How you want to do this? And Moses is like, no, we got to take everybody with us. We got to worship. I need all my animals. I need all my people, young and old. Everybody got to go. We can't leave nothing behind. Not a hoof can be left behind. And Pharaoh is like, absolutely not. And so after the darkness lifts, Pharaoh calls Moses in and was like, we're not doing this. I'm not letting the people go. You can't come in here no more. And the next time you do come in here, that's your life. That's your life. The next time you come in here, there's no more to it. And that was the end of chapter 11 in Exodus. So what I want us to remember is, 1, when you have a bad decision and you feel like you are doubling down on this thing, somebody said to me once, when the elephants fight, the grass suffers. I need you to remember that there are people connected to you. There are children. There are family. There are people just with lives that are intermingled with yours. When the elephants fight, Pharaoh felt like he was an elephant and he was gonna fight with God, who is an elephant. They was ready to tussle, and honestly, Pharaoh didn't match up, so he lost, and he lost bad. But when he lost in this fight, everything underneath him lost as well. So I want us to remember, sometimes the tussle ain't yours. You don't gotta fight to prove your point. Sometimes you gotta let that thing go, and just let God do what He gonna do. When you fighting with God about how you gonna do something or what you want to do, because you trying to put your will above His, you're gonna lose every time, and it's gonna hurt you, and it's gonna hurt the people connected to you in the process. So let's be obedient, y'all. Let's be obedient. Y'all be blessed.